It's finally happening. We're finally doing an episode on dragons.
Really?
Sort of. I'm Vince.
I'm Claire.
And this is
Friends of Legend!
Welcome to Friends of Legend, a weekly podcast where we pay tribute to the creatures that spark wonder in our hearts.
Creatures that influence both the young and the old.
That's right. So, as we hinted at, we are going to be doing an episode on a dragon-like figure, the Imugi. Now, Claire, have you ever heard of the Imugi?
Not before you told me about this episode.
So, to kind of give you a one-sentence summary, an Imugi is a undeveloped or immature dragon from Korea.
Oh, that sounds cute and innocent.
It is a pretty wholesome creature, and we'll be getting into that a little more. But other names that the Imugi are known by are Kangchori, which means steel or hard iron.
Oh, doesn't sound very immature to me.
No, it doesn't. And I was not really able to figure out how it got its name other than, I guess they're tough.
Okay.
Another name that you see a lot is Ishimi.
Sounds like a sushi type.
It does. So to give you a description of its appearance, it looks sort of midway between a large serpent and an eastern dragon, which in itself already kind of looks like a serpent.
Sure.
So its head is a lot more elongated. With the adornments that you sometimes see on Eastern dragons, some Imugi will have them, like the horns, the beard, the whiskers, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Others will not. I think most don't, but it might have something to do with what age an Imugi is. As far as appendages go, they don't have any. They got snake bodies. They slither around on
no
their
wings.
tummies. No wings.
Okay.
But Eastern dragons don't really ever have wings.
That's true.
So yeah, they're very snake-like body-wise. And then as far as coloration goes, I saw a lot of descriptions where they are supposed to look like pythons, either like a single sort of brown color or the reticulated mottled yellows, blacks, and browns.
Okay.
But then a lot of them also have green coloration, like you would see in a typical Eastern dragon. For simplification going forward, the Korean word for an adult dragon is yong. So I'll be referring to dragons in comparison to Imugi as yong.
Okay. So do you think that their colorations are more on the dull side, the nature palette, because they're camouflaging?
I don't know what reason they'd have for camouflage. They don't really have any natural predators. But it might just be sort of a reflection of their connection to nature, because they are emblematic of nature, as I will go into.
Oh, lovely.
So moving on to their behavior, these creatures live in bodies of water, both fresh and salt, and they also live in caves. They're relatively rare, but the sighting of an Imugi is always a treasured experience because they are said to give good luck to anyone who sees them.
Aww.
Isn't that special? So their behavior is very characteristic of all creatures that fall within the sort of dragon archetype of the East, whereas Western dragons are typically represented as beings of fire and destruction. Imugi and Yong are more associated with water and prosperity. One of the powers that both Imugi and Yong are best known for are their ability to control the weather. There is a story that I read where a monk from a small village finds an Imugi in a pond and beseeches it to bring rain to the area because the crops are failing. And the Imugi grants his wish. He brings heavy rain, even though he knows that the celestial Jade Emperor, which is a god, has told him expressly not to do this and that he'll be punished for it. So when a messenger from the Jade Emperor comes down and starts looking around for the Imugi, the monk has the Imugi hide under the floorboards of his temple, and when the messenger comes rolling around and asking, the monk points at a jujube tree nearby and says that the Imugi turned into the tree. So after that, the Imugi went back to his pond and continued to bring rain whenever the villagers asked for it.
They must be really little to be able to hide under floorboards.
It must have been a very big temple, because all depictions I've seen of Imugi are pretty big, like, bigger than a python, for sure.
Yeah.
But evidently not so big that they couldn't fit underneath the floor of a temple. They're also characterized as very noble and helpful creatures. Another story that I read was of a woodsman and his neighbor looking around to harvest ginseng roots. They found ginseng roots at the bottom of a cliff, so the woodsman climbed down and his friend lowered a bucket on a string. After the woodsman had filled the bucket with ginseng roots, the neighbor pulled the bucket up and left the friend down there.
Oh, jeez.
Nearby, there was an Imugi. In this story, it was referred to as Ishimi. It slithered around and saw that the man was in a desperate state. He didn't know if he could climb back up. So the Ishimi lowered his head and let the man climb on top of his back. He slithered all the way up the cliff and brought the man to safety. Later, however, the Ishimi wandered into the village, found the mean-spirited neighbor, and bit him so hard that he died.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so they're kind of chaotic good, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they're vengeful, at least.
That being said, that was the only story I could see where they committed an act of violence against people. Seem to be pretty neutral creatures who, if they do run into a person, they're just gonna do a good deed.
Well, it kind of reminds me of the Nagas and Naginis in that way.
Definitely. I think that the Nagas were a little bit more vindictive with the whole skin disease thing.
Yeah.
But they share the quality of living in bodies of water and being very close to the nature of the area.
And being snaky.
And being snaky and helpful.
So, since they can control the weather, can they fly too?
As far as I can tell, Imugi can't fly until they have become a yong.
Okay, a full dragon.
Yes, that's one of the perks of being a yong.
Cool. That reminds me of that episode of Pokemon that we just watched, where the little Dragonair couldn't fly, but he learned the way, and he was just a little baby dragon too.
And he became a Dragonite at the end. We're actually going to talk about Dragonair because Dragonair and Imugi share several things in common.
Oh, good.
But going back to the behavior of the Imugi itself, as far as diet goes, no one really talks about what they eat, which is always a good sign because it means that they don't eat people. I would have to assume that they eat fish, given that they live in water.
Yeah, like How to Train Your Dragon.
Yep.
But not the eels, not the stripy eels.
Probably consider eels to be distant cousins, even though eels and snakes aren't actually related in any way.
Right, limbless, but yeah, okay, I got you.
Serpentine. As far as where Imugi come from, it seems like most Imugi are born of dragons. They're just baby dragons. But that is not the only way that an Imugi can take shape. So it is said that a human girl can become an Imugi if the sun god Hemosu grants her this power at birth. She will become an Imugi on her 17th birthday with this power, and you can always tell if your daughter is going to become an Imugi if she has a dragon-shaped birthmark on her shoulder.
So are we talking like a really clear clip art of a dragon essentially on your shoulder? Or could it be vaguely dragon-shaped? Because I'm sure there would be a lot of scared little girls who would kind of be Rorschaching it, looking for a dragon.
That's fair. It does kind of lead to deductive reasoning, but knowing the way that most gods behave, I'm sure it is an ambiguous thing. That being said, all you have to do is wait 17 years and then you'll know. There's no ambiguity about that.
So, do you know if when these girls turn into Imugi, do they leave their families? Are they sentient still?
All Imugi are sentient.
Oh.
They have, in fact, superhuman wisdom and intelligence.
Oh, Lord.
Being dragons.
Right. Of course. I'm sorry, I doubted you.
Oh, no, of course not. So, that might be another way that you could identify a human girl soon to become an Imugi. I imagine that they would have that sort of wise beyond their years behavior even before you had the chance to notice the birthmark or witness the metamorphosis.
Is this a very common occurrence? Are there a ton of Imugi?
No, they're very rare. Even rarer still are the young, and that's because it's not easy. It's not easy for an Imugi to mature into a fully grown young.
What does it take?
There's a couple different ways it can be done. Most commonly, if an Imugi grows to be 1,000 years in age, it will eventually grow little leg sprouts, and the whiskers, and the beard, and the horns, and the ability to fly, and it will join the gods in the heavens as a wise, powerful young.
Oh, that's wonderful. That sounds like the end of an Imugi movie.
It does. The other way, which is simpler, but far less common, is for an Imugi to find and obtain a Yuiju. So a Yuiju is an object that descends very rarely from the heavens. It is said to grant wishes, and it is described sometimes as a jewel, other times as a star, but most often as an orb. Does it sound like anything we've talked about before from Eastern culture? Shirokotama.
Something fell from the sky?
So yeah, that's the thing. There's obviously not a complete one-to-one facsimile, but it is an orb that grants wishes. In one case...
I don't think a Shirakodama grants wishes.
Actually, it does.
Oh.
I can't remember if I mentioned that in the episode, but I did learn either before or after that it is capable of granting wishes and houses a human soul. But I digress. So, if an Imugi finds a Yuiju that descends from the heavens and grabs it, either with its mouth or wrapping it in its coils, it will instantly become a young.
That reminds me of when a Pokemon eats like a rare candy and they instantly evolve.
Yeah, something like that. I think that this idea, the Yuiju and the dragon and the wishes and the orbs, is a lot of where the Dragon Ball manga and anime series gets its inspiration.
Neato.
Though with a lot less buff dudes fighting each other.
Well, you don't know that.
I don't know that, but I can infer. So, like I said, it's not easy to become a young as a young Imugi, and some don't ever get the chance. Some are cursed either as Imugi or even after having become a young to remain Imugi forever. And this is usually if they are impure or evil.
Oh no. Forever babies.
Forever babies. So they have the bulk of their power stripped away from them, even though they still are large, strong, weather-controlling snakies.
So if an evil Imugi doesn't eat humans, as far as we know, what other evils would they commit?
Destroying nature, I think.
Yeah.
I was not really able to find a story of an evil Imugi, but I did see references to Imugis occasionally causing destruction.
So they're probably not fire breathers, but do they breathe water or steam?
No breath weapons, just big old chompers and squeezers, and maybe lightning bolts.
Ooh. So, I have another question. Since Imugi are pretty dang rare, I'm guessing they don't live in colonies, or do they?
No, they live in solitude. I imagine they only meet up with each other to breed. Or, honestly, I didn't do too much research into the young. Maybe they have a big old young colony in the sky.
A young council.
But I don't think that the Imugi have family units because they are youngsters in and of themselves.
I'm going to mention Pokemon a third time.
Okay, I welcome it.
If you're not familiar with the Pokemon Drampa, Drampa, that's what I imagine a young looks like. Go look it up, please. It's precious. It's a dragon grandpa.
It's a beautiful old baby. So, with the description of its behavior out of the way, let's get into modern representation. The piece of media that brought Imugis under the global eye was a South Korean movie called Dragon Wars D-War.
Ooh.
This movie, despite being made by a South Korean film crew, was all in English and included some pretty famous North American actors like Craig Robinson and Robert Forster. It was a story about two Imugis, a good Imugi and a bad Imugi, that were fighting each other in the modern world in order to obtain a Yuiju that had descended.
Oh my. Was it any good, do you think?
I watched the last fight scene in the movie between the two Imugis. It was
something.
It was something. It did pretty well for itself. Apparently it was the highest budgeted movie ever to come out of South Korea at the time.
Well done, South Korea. Now, is the plural of Imugi Imugis or Imugi?
I don't actually know, unfortunately. If any of our dear listeners happen to know, please send us an email and let us know.
We love your emails.
Yes, we do. The other representation I was able to find was from a young adult series called Alosha. It had Imugis, though they called them Kool or Kowl. It's spelled Koul, but the description of the creatures had all the hallmarks of the Imugi, except in order to become a fully fledged dragon, they had to perform 3 feats. They had to do an act of kindness, they had to swim a great distance, and they had to do a leap of faith. And then after that, they would become a fully fledged dragon. But the dragons they became were more European style. They had wings, and they could breathe fire.
An angel gets its wings.
Yeah, a drangel. Another really cool one that I really liked is a puppet play that is popular in South Korea called Fly Ishimi. Of course, the word fly wouldn't be fly, it'd be whatever the Korean word is. It's a story about an angry but well-meaning old Imugi who teaches nearby villagers the value of environmental awareness after the villagers have started throwing trash in its pond.
Oh my gosh, that's very Loraxy, and I love it.
It's very sweet. It's often performed for children and adults, and it'll usually have sort of like a puppet dragon on poles a puppet Imugi on poles that will glide through the audience, and it's a very touching story about why you should take care of the nature around you.
Yes, I love it.
And lastly, as we had already mentioned, there are 2 Pokemon that are inspired by the Imugi, Dratini and Dragonair, which are in the same evolutionary chain. Mm-hmm. So Dratini is sort of a little serpent dragon with ear fins, and Dragonair is a longer serpent with wings on its ears, a horn, and then 2 orbs on its tail and 1 on its neck.
Oh, okay, the orbs. Yes.
So that one is more emblematic of the Imugi because it has the orbs. Essentially, every Pokedex entry about Dragonair talks about how it can control the weather.
Oh, yeah.
And for the longest time, it took more effort to evolve a Dragonair into Dragonite, which is a fully formed, albeit Western dragon.
Yeah.
Than any other Pokemon.
Yeah. It is very much a Western dragon, and I always thought that was so weird.
Yeah. Goofy, but lovely.
It's pretty precious. I'm upset that you mentioned the Shirokudama in this episode. I request that you not do that again.
I will make you a solemn promise that I will bring up the Shirokudama every time it is relevant. So those were the major modern representations that I was able to find of the Ishimi. So let's get into how to become friends with it.
Yes, please.
Humility and kindness. Those are the 2 traits that the Imugi best represents and that the Imugi best prizes. If you are willing to be humble, ask for help, be respectful, do kind things like the monk and the woodsman did, then you will have a friend in the Imugi. It might not necessarily seek you out, but if you run across one and you espouse these traits, then it'll do good things for you.
I'd really like to curl up with one in their cave and just have a nice snuggle.
Noodle nap. The other thing, which I've hinted at multiple times, is to be aware and a good caretaker of your environment. Imugi are almost physical manifestations of the element of water in its purity and importance to life. As such, they only live in pristine bodies of water and suffer what seems to be spiritual damage whenever that area is polluted. Oh. They don't take it out on you like the Nagas and Naginis do, but think about the hurt that you'd see in an Imugi's eyes if you tossed your empty bag of chips
Oh my gosh, it's so much worse to have someone disappointed in you than actually shouting at you.
Especially if it's a precious, kind, generally harmless dragon serpent.
Oh.
So with that, I think it's time to give this friend a rating. Now, if you haven't listened to our podcast before, first of all, welcome.
Hi.
It's good to have you here. But we have a 4-tiered rating system to gauge how easy it is to become friends with a creature. The first tier is friend-shaped. It's going to be something that's docile and wants to become friends with you. Think of something like a gnome.
The next tier is cheeky friend, and that's a little pal who is sometimes up to no good. They might play pranks or say rude things, but generally they are pretty friendly.
Third tier in the list is spicy friend. This is a creature that you can become friends with, though it is difficult and may risk harm to yourself. Think of something like the Tarrasque.
And the last tier is not a friend yet. That's a creature who we're putting our journey to find them on the back burner. We're going to do a bit more research as far as how to be safe and not meet a tragic demise when attempting our friendship, like the Kappas.
So, with all that in mind, what rating would you give the Imugi?
I think a definitive friend-shaped.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like if just looking at a creature gives you good luck, that's an automatic shoo-in for friend-shaped.
Also, this whole episode, I've just had the image of a Dratini and a Dragonair in my mind, and they're dang near the cutest little things I ever saw. So, yeah, you bet I want to become their friend.
Well, let's give a hearty thanks to the Pokemon series for endearing the Imugi to us all.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you so much for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, feel free to leave us a review on the podcast service you use, or even subscribe to us. It really means a lot to us.
It does mean a lot to us. When you subscribe, you get notified of our new episodes, which are out every Saturday.
If you want to get more Friends of Legend content, feel free to visit our website, friendsoflegend.com, where we have full roster of our episodes, frequently asked questions, and a place where you can send in a contact form to us if you want to suggest a new creature, have some more information on the previous creature, or just want to shoot the breeze.
Yeah, and not only do we have the website, but we also are on Facebook and Twitter. And on Twitter, we leave hints about the creature that we're going to do our next episodes on. So be sure to follow us there and see if you can find out the new creature of the week.
Thank you so much again for listening to our podcast. And remember, when it comes to Friends of Legend, charm them.
Do not harm them.